all that time you spent screwing up, it probably takes equal amount of time to get it right. If you get up and get after it 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, you're going to be a lot less likely to make poor choices the rest of the day. The rest of the day is going to seem a whole heck of a lot easier. By choosing my hard to be these hard workouts, it makes these other life problems not so insurmountable.
Every time I watch that, I like it for a different reason. I feel like it's almost like your favorite movie. Every time you watch it, you have a different part that stands out to you. But um, you know, this message that Carl says there about choosing to make my hard things the hard things in the gym makes life's challenges seem more or less insurmountable. I have found over the course of a decade plus of doing this lifestyle, CrossFit lifestyle, training, methodology, living, is that like life is frustrating, life is challenging, and hard things will come your way, and they can come in any different shape or size. But going to the gym regularly and taking on a difficult challenge makes people tougher and increases your likelihood to do that. And that was what jumped out at me today. That's Carl Kaplan with HGR CBD, sponsoring our podcast to get things going for 2024 calendar year. Yeah, had their relief stick on the road with me this week at the Fittest Experience, and it was great. I had just kind of like a dull headache in the mornings for whatever reason, and put that stuff on, and generally just feel better throughout the day. Don't necessarily need to take any Advil or Aleve or that type of stuff. It's a different alternative that I found when that happens.
Yeah, it's weird because Carl's one of those guys, who puts himself out there, and I greatly respect that. And he's, it's something that he believes in, not just the fitness of his product, but how they can just coexist. And he's, if you ever get a chance to meet him, yeah, just if you're at a competition and you see that they're set up, more than likely he's probably competing at said competition. But introduce yourself or to his team, because usually everyone, I mean, he's got like-minded people around him as well, and just a good dude. And I just really love their message. I love what they're about. Just everything. He's just trying to be better. Just that's all he's trying to do, is just be better, and he's got something that's helping people be better and do good things. So yeah.
Yep. If you're watching, you guys can see there. If not, if you're listening, code friend20 will get you 20% off. And if you're looking for something to try out, I would either go for the topical sticks that you can apply the relieve, or if you like to apply the balms yourself or have someone apply it to you with a hand or with a scraper tool or something like that. Similar product, just a different consistency. Or the gummies, HGR CBD, gummies are really good too. I know a lot of people are into that stuff. So that's what I would recommend as a starter if you're looking for something from them.
So I was catching up on some work last night, as always. That's me. But you actually have some catching up to do. If you go up on our website today, you'll see there's 2 news stories up. One's a recap of Wodapalooza, kind of just your thoughts. I know we recapped it on the show, but kind of pen on paper or finger on keyboard, your recap of Wodapalooza, a little bit more detail. Yeah.
It's I mean, this when I was on that longer trip, August, September into October, I wasn't so fast necessarily always getting these out, just because one stop to the next. It's quick, and I don't want to write these just for the sake of writing them. I try to
Mhm.
actually put something in there that I feel is valuable for, and not just necessarily for that competition, but maybe for other competition organizers, directors, programmers. I don't have a template that I use for this. I kind of just do it free flowing based on what the experience was like there. Sometimes it's very personal to me. Sometimes it's very focused on the athletes, sometimes more on the experience overall. And Wadapalooza is a big one. And I had several different roles there. There was a lot that happened, you just in the pro division alone, 4 different competitions between men and women over 4 days, not to mention the LATAM Cup that I was covering on the broadcast. So it was a lot. I went straight into Fittest of the Coast, and then that the Fittest of the Coast review actually came up prior to Wadapalooza, but I was able to write it, so we got it up there. As always, I think these are good reads if you're running a competition, programming for one, competing at them. It contextualizes some stuff just about the experience that you may not know about otherwise. And then we were able to get it up there. The Fittest Experience one is going to be number 19 of 20. So, and I wanted to make sure to have one for every stop on the tour. So we wanted to get the Wadapalooza one out too.
Yeah. So let's talk about the physics. That was stop 19. Wadapalooza was 17, and then Fittest of the Coast was 18. So yeah, we're on 19.
Yeah, it's a competition that I've never been to before. It's been around for a long time. I learned a ton about it there. I kind of added a few little details at the start of this article just about some of the things that I've learned. This is a cool thing they did at the end of competition on Sunday. They had a finals for every division. The pro division was the only one without cuts, I believe, or maybe some of the masters that didn't have enough athletes to cut. But some of their divisions are huge. Like John Young was there competing in the RX men's field. There were 85 men, and they cut that. They had 6 workouts over the 3 days, and then a final, which the top 10 qualified for. And they would throw the athletes together and take a picture. So these were the top men and women. They competed at the same heat on the last day in the last event, and then they put them all together to take a little picture there on the floor. And they did this for every division, or every final heat, I should say, on the last day, which is kind of cool.
So let's talk about that. Well, first we need to send a shout out to John Young. He competed. He actually did. I mean, I don't know if you saw it on. I think it was Spin. Here we go. Jeffrey, pros had cuts.
For the teams, the pros had cuts. For the individuals, they did not.
Yeah. But John. If you went to Spin, he had a video of him. I believe it's 325.
Jeff Birchall was down there. He was judging the whole weekend. Huge supporter of us, huge supporter of Sevon, and just one of the best guys, man. I've gotten to see him a few times this year. Always love seeing Jeff. So thanks for being here today, man. I jumped in and judged on the last day is what he's talking about. And we ended up in a lane next to each other. Yeah, they were nice. They were short on a couple of judges for the last event. It had a huge demand on judging because it was a waterfall style workout for the teams of 3, and a judge was needed for each athlete. So it was not happening obviously at the same time as the pro division. So I jumped in and judged for those 3 heats, which was fun to do. I sat in on the judging briefing, which is always nice because I've done this before, few and far between, but you get to see kind of another angle of the competition and another group of people who are there, most of them volunteering, and are a critical component of making the kind of the wheel turn and spin. So happy to do it. Thankful the movements were relatively straightforward in that workout, and got to line up there next to Jeff and do a little judging.
Well, I'm jealous of that. That's actually one of the competitions if I ever do come back and judge, that'd probably be one of the competitions I'd love to judge at. John Young. Let's talk about our boy John. Before competed in the RX division, 33rd, I think out of I don't know how many, roughly
85,
70,
probably
85. Yeah, 85. But
and honestly, he could have done better than this, or he probably did do better than this. And it's always hard to say because John's a friend of mine. So I get to talk to him, and I
Mhm.
know about a few things that happened that were inconvenient for him and potentially are actually reflecting worse fitness than he had in this competition. But I didn't talk to the other 84 men in the division who may have had some similar things happen that I don't know about. And that is always a good thing to be aware of. Whoever your closest contact is in the competition, you're going to hear everything from them, good and bad. But every person that they're lining up next to will have a group of people that they also talk to, and they also express everything that happened to them, good and bad. And all of those good or bad things are from their perspective individually, just like our entire experience as a human is. So I believe that there are at least 2 scores on here that John actually would have done or did do better on than it shows. Either way, he has clearly improved from last year when he competed at this all the way up to this one. And it's not that he doesn't like running. It's just relatively not as good as it relative to the field. And I think that his time was actually at least a minute faster than what's seen there. But there were bigger picture complications with that workout than just what happened to John. And they weren't necessarily the competition's fault. And I did actually have a chance to sit in with the competition scoring team and the competition director for the entire event and troubleshoot some ways to solve what were over 100 disputes on that workout alone in as few steps as possible. The problem is that it can't happen instantaneously. And when John reaches out to his buddies who are asking him how he did, and he was frustrated with how it went, and then one of those guys decides to post something that calls the entire competition effing idiots because they're not doing something, it's just completely irresponsible and lacking perspective, especially when that's a person who has a chance to communicate with me, who knows I'm there and probably has some more information about this. And so, whoever you are, if you hear from someone at a competition that something has happened, because in this case, what John said was true from his perspective, but he had received the communication that was inconsistent with what was actually happening across the 1,200 athletes that were there competing in the 16th version of this competition. So there's always more to the story than whatever you're hearing from one person. And if all you're doing is taking one piece of information and then for whatever reason deciding to blast that out on Instagram in a wildly negative manner, you are probably contributing to the problem more than anyone else in the equation.
Well, it's a shame not having John finish up the weekend. Looks like he didn't make it to the finals, but I mean, he finished pretty strong. Like I said, an 8 and a 5, so 2 top 10 finishes. It was 3:15 that he did the Atlas workout. So
And look, the 2 workouts that were, I think, misrepresented were the heavy rope, heavy bag and the chop wood carry water, which were by far his worst workouts. He's obviously incredibly strong, and actually, I think in a different format could have done even better on the Atlas workout. But that there was also a couple guys in his division that he would not have beaten. I don't know if
yeah,
anyone got to see it, but Matt Rattay, known as
I'm
Mighty
gonna
Mouse,
bring
was
it up.
there,
I'll
and
bring
Devin
it up.
Brown, which I don't think we'll have the Devin Brown clip, which is too bad
Yeah.
because they really should have showed both side by side. Devin Brown is Matt Rattay is called Mighty Mouse for a reason. He's a smaller guy, an incredibly good lifter. I mean, I got to watch him again this weekend do this lift. His speed under the bar on the jerk is on par with, as in terms of speed, with anyone I've ever seen. And he's got a tremendous amount of confidence, and obviously he puts in the work to get here. But like that split jerk, it's just so fast. And I'm telling you, whatever you're seeing here, you can't appreciate how fast the bar and his feet go. I mean, it's crazy. But let's just say he's 5'8" or 5'7" and 180 pounds, maybe 190 at most. The other guy who lifted 5 pounds less than this, and Matt had an advantage of going after Devin. I don't know, Larry. Devin Brown is 6'3" or 4" and weighs 240 pounds, and he did 5 pounds less than that, but in like 2 or 3 rounds of lifting earlier, maybe even 5 rounds of lifting earlier, and Matt knew that that was the weight he needed to do it. Now, if it had gone the other way, would Devin have been able to do more than Matt? I think Devin could have done more than he did, but I also think Matt probably could have done more than he did. And these 2 guys, I mean, even though they're in the RX division, which is not the pro division, they outlifted in this ladder, which ended at 335 for a clean +2 shoulder overheads from the floor. they got the call your shot bar. This guy, dude, they're just characters. I mean, these two guys could be in a movie, quite frankly.
Yeah.
They would be one of these like dynamic duos that would show up. Just this massive jacked black guy and this shorter, powerful Mighty Mouse character. So anyway, super fun to watch them lift, and I liked this event because both the men and the women in the RX and men's division did the same ladder, and therefore we got, instead of just getting 16 or 17 data points from the pro division, we also got to see 60 on the women's side and 80 on the men's side in the RX fields go through this ladder. And obviously we know, especially from opens gone past and quarterfinals in the past, that sometimes the best lifters come out of the non-elite fields. And so it was cool to see those two guys lift.
Yeah. I don't know. John, what he push jerked his, didn't he? He didn't split. He push jerked both of them.
Yeah, and actually he missed at 335, and he said he just thinks he should have power cleaned it. He thought that the squat clean took some stuff out of his legs. But either way, his 5th place on that workout, 8th on another, 27th, and he had those two kind of poor performances, relatively speaking, but there was some circumstantial stuff there that I think maybe wasn't the perfect representation of where he's actually at.
Yeah.
Well, and it was fun to watch him compete a little bit, and it's cool. It's cool to know someone that's in a field of 80 plus. And I was talking to another buddy of mine recently who, is training to compete at a similar level. And it's like, these guys are not just random guys. Even at TFX, if you're qualifying for the men's RX division and if you go and watch those people compete, they're in the gym 5 to 6 days a week for 2 to 4 hours a day training for this. And half that division, maybe all but 5 people in that division, probably never have a chance to make a semifinal in the current format. But they're still out there, and they're savages. And that's why I'm going around and covering these events, is because there are people out there, and there always have been in this sport, that are working their ass off, that are incredibly fit, incredibly impressive. And it's on the athlete side, the competition side, the programming side, that are putting these things together. And I think there are people that will enjoy watching more and more of this stuff and get to know more and more of these athletes.
Take care, Jeff. Appreciate all your help this weekend. Yeah. So, John, just great job. Like I said, put yourself out there, especially, I guess, as someone who's a lot more people know compared to last year, but you're improving. Definitely loved seeing it, and proud of you, buddy. So let's move on to the actual competition, the actual elite. Let's start with the Go Pro Women.
Sure. I mean, this was the Pro Women boasted the 2 previous individual CrossFit Games athletes, and you see them there, Sydney McCallishan and Abigail Dammit. And it was, it's, of course, there's never any guarantees, but coming into this, you would have expected that in some order they would finish 1st and 2nd, and they do end up doing that, with Sydney taking the win by 17 points there relative to Abby. I think for Sydney, this was a really important competition. She qualified for the games twice in a row, pretty young athlete doing that. She had, so performances at the games, and then she missed it last year. She was 15th out west. They took 9, I think, or 10 spots, maybe 10 spots. And she only missed it by like 30 points. It was pretty competitive, but it's a letdown for her. After making it twice in a row to the games, if you don't make it, you can, as an athlete, you can kind of enter into this headspace of what just happened. Like, what went wrong? Because now I'm training for the games. I'm not happy with my 25th and 32nd or whatever her 2 finishes are that year. I want to push into that top 20. I want to threaten for a top 10 spot. Let's go back to the drawing board and see what we can do to make that happen. And then you show up to a semifinal and you don't make it. And it's like this shock. And then you can have one of 2 responses. That could deflate an athlete, and they could kind of disappear, or they could just rescind back into their bubble, and you don't see them again until next year's semifinal. I don't love that strategy, if that's the strategy you go for. I like the concept of going out there at least once in the off season, maybe twice, trying to find a competition where you can go out there and test yourself in a different format, and see what you can learn about what you've been doing since that disappointment of semifinals and give yourself enough time before the next semifinals, which, you know, despite all these great off-season competitions, for the athletes of that caliber, the goal is still to make the CrossFit Games, which means that the critical weekend of the year is semifinals. And so instead of giving yourself a full 12 months, let's see what happens and hope that we did all the right things. Why not take a checkpoint halfway through that time period
Mm-hmm.
and go and see where you're at? Because a training cycle is not 12 months. You can do
Yep.
2 or 3 training blocks, come to a competition, get that competition experience, see if what you've been working on is working, and then go back and reevaluate with your coach or your coaching team and do that again leading into the semis. You know, I don't think that, anyway. And in this case, if you read the article we wrote, there was a very specific workout that I think shows great growth for Sydney in an area that was exposed at semifinals, which was, it just so happened that there was a running and snatching event at semifinals with like moderate weight barbell snatching. And there was one at this competition, and her results were pretty different from that being kind of the thing that took her out of competition or contention at the semis, and to being one of her strong finishes here this weekend. You can see it there. Where is it? Snatch and go.
Yeah.
A little bit further down there, where she came second by 1 rep to Abby Dammit, who is, you know, another games athlete in the field. Larry Young, I do appreciate you covering all of it. The Masters girls, savages. Well,
Thanks, Larry.
yes, the Masters women are savages. Oh my gosh, going into the last day of competition there in the 35 to 39 Masters, there was a 3-way tie for first. And it came down to a winner take all between 2 of them, and our friend Ashley Rincon, wearing the B.Friendly Texas t-shirt, actually, I saw on Instagram, ended up taking the win there. And that is the thing. There are, you know, this competition, like I said, 1,200 athletes, over 30 divisions. I'm not live streaming all of those. I really cannot do that. But I do take note. At all these competitions I go to, I'll look through the leaderboards at least at the end of the competition and kind of see what's going on. I had a chance to talk to a few Masters athletes in the airport. I talked to Chris Ryle, the winner of one of the divisions there in the Masters. He's won several stuff before. And I think that those athletes know that I appreciate them and value what they're capable of doing. And, you know, just for now, it's not really practical or possible to stream all divisions all day, especially when there's 3 or 4 competition floors happening at one time and I'm one person. Jason McAlishan, thanks for your broadcasting efforts. Brian at TFX made following the event from afar so much better. Of course, man. Yeah, love to do it.
It's Brain, not Brian. It's Brain.
Okay.
I don't think that was a mess up. I think you're definitely the Brain here.
Well, and look, this is I think this is Sydney's dad, and I think they live in rural Canada, and it's not worth it for them to make a trip down to Texas in January, February, especially when it's not any warmer than it is again. But they want to watch. Of course, they want to watch their daughter compete, their relatives compete, their training partners, people that, you know, from her town in Canada that grew up there. Like, that's not who your ticket sales are, on-site ticket sales are. Marketing to in Texas, but that's an audience that absolutely would want to watch. And look, we ran into some problems this weekend. The internet was not strong enough there, the bandwidth, to support a live stream on Instagram. And so we called an audible. We took the advice of Andrew Hiller. Let's try something out. We'll record it, because I can record on my phone. It's going to be a great video. I can still speak as if it's live. We'll put it up on YouTube, and then at least those people can have something to watch that matches up with what I'm saying. And it sounds like the feedback I've gotten was pretty positive on that as a troubleshoot for the situation that we were dealt down there.
You mentioned, obviously a great performance by Sydney. Like you were saying, we haven't seen much of her since semifinals. She did a team competition at Madrid, and then, you know, took kind of Wadapalooza off and then did this competition. And I think those are, like you said, I think those are very important. It gives that athlete some data points. You know, the team competition is kind of a fun kind of, you know, you're not peaking too much. A perfect example is someone like Justin Medeiros, who did team at Wadapalooza. You know, he's nowhere near the shape of being an individual. Like you said, he's not at that level yet, but he still wants to compete. He still wants to see where he's at and see where some of the things he's working on, if it's working. You kind of see it on a smaller scale, maybe a smaller sample size of whatever you're working at, in whether it be the shred shed or in your gym or wherever, if it's actually working. And I think this absolutely is great for Sydney. It's great for her in many ways, because now she has a new location. She's part of Proven. She made the move to Nashville. Her and her coach Jarrett came from CompTrain. Yeah, and I mean, from the looks of it, Jarrett's extremely happy. I know Sydney's happy. So this is really good for her, and a good indication of where she's at fitness wise as we head into the open season coming up pretty quick.
And look, the competition at TFX, it's a 3-day competition. There's 7 scored events. You went long and outdoors. You had a heavy lifting ladder. You had an interval style workout. You had 2 back-to-back workouts. You had a skills test, basically.
Yep.
And then you had a fast and furious final. Like, this very closely mirrors the type of programming that you could expect to see at a semifinal. Yep. And it wasn't just her. Several athletes that I spoke to throughout the weekend, who are at this point, given the changes to the season, I would say, bottom half to fringe semifinalists. If you're only taking 40 and 40 men and women, East and West, it's going to be hard to make it. And some people who have been regulars at semifinals the last couple of years won't be, because there's just not enough spots. But if that's what you're targeting, this is a really good competition to kind of get a check-in and see, because it's not, and I wrote about this in this article, it's not just what happens on the floor. It's how do I recover over 3 days? How do I sleep when I'm on the road? How early do I need to arrive to make sure I'm acclimated and ready to put my best forward on day one, event one? Because you can't afford to be at 50% in terms of sleep or whatever. How does my meal plan work? Did I eat enough or not? All these little things that for these athletes do matter, and that they're preparing for that. They're not just preparing to say, okay, are my ring muscle ups dialed in? Am I prepared to do a heavy ladder of shoulder? No, obviously they're training for those things, but the other details matter. And when the margins are as small as they are, especially in North America and Europe this year, at both the quarterfinals to get to semifinals and semifinals to get to the game stage, you gotta have those things dialed in, and there's not many better ways to do it than to do it.
You mentioned Abigail. Abigail's an interesting athlete. Kind of burst onto the scene last year. Not too much information about her, especially when it comes to competition. But when it does come to competition, if you do any research, TFX is her competition. That's the one she's been doing CrossFit competitively for 3 years now, and I believe she's competed every year since she started CrossFit. And she had a great performance, 4 event wins, 7 top 5 finishes, just finishing behind Sydney, who at this point, Sydney has a little bit, you would expect Sydney to be the favorite. So a really good showing by her.
Absolutely. And actually, we found out this weekend that she prefers to be called Abby over Abigail. So we'll try our best to do that. Lauren Cleo find that out for us.
I like Abby.
Yeah. And it was cool too, because I talked to Sydney at the end of the competition. She called her Abby and said that it was really nice to have her there and to be able to kind of battle with her. Obviously Domit made the games this year. She was I think 2 or 3 spots clear of the cut line, but still the points margins between her and Sydney at semifinals were not dramatic. And if you're looking at her results there, those pro showcases, so the A was a freestanding handstand hold. The B was triple unders, and the C was ring muscle ups, one unbroken set of ring muscle ups. 18 ring muscle ups in an unbroken set after doing AMRAP triple unders, after doing handstand hold. That's a pretty good number.
It is.
On the women's side, obviously it's good enough to win, but it's like that's if you're looking to learn about her, and if you watch that event back, you'll see that her receiving position on ring muscle ups is pretty high, all the way right up until the last rep. So she's got a really strong pull, catch, and then she's able to dip out of it more easily than most of the women. Look, a minute on a freestanding handstand hold is not bad. This was crazy, dude. There were 2 heats of women. In the first heat, I think Alina Ward might have gone like a minute 6 or minute 7. And I don't know if anyone else in the heat went over a minute. And then in the second heat, like half of the heat was still up past the minute mark. You see Abby kicked down at 59 seconds, and that was good enough for 10th. It was, I
Wow.
mean, it was crazy. There were a lot of women in the field that were really good at the handstand hold, um, compared to the men. And so that's like a 10th place finish there on a very specific skill. When you look at this bottom part and you see snatch and go, the intervals of running and snatching, Atlas, 2 rep max shoulder overhead from the floor, finals, which was, look at the time, 4:36. And I've always said,
Mhm.
if you want to be great in the sport of CrossFit, 4 to 8 minutes, be great at that, and it'll pay off
Mhm.
for you. So to get 3 wins on those 3 workouts, intervals, heavy, and then this high intensity gymnastics and weightlifting, well, lunging, combination there in the middle. That is the type of stuff that you'd expect to see from someone of her caliber.
Yeah, I was fairly impressed by her, especially the finish like that. And then, one thing that's not really talked about when it comes to Abby is her weightlifting prowess. And I mean, we got to see a little bit of that last year at the games. But here at Atlas 225, for 2, that's some heavy weight. So it's impressive.
Yeah, and it was actually very like that. We've been seeing this more and more in off-season competition, and I think that it's okay because it is a part of it. Like execution matters a ton in this sport, and
Mhm.
it's seeming to be even put more and more to premium with the way that some of these events are designed. So this was a ladder. The women started super light and finished at 205. Take it from the floor for 2 reps, shoulder to overhead, and the relative challenge of doing that compared to the men's ladder, which finished at 335, was palpable. It was very different. And we highlight this in the article with some numbers and percentages across both the pro and RX fields. But by Abby and Sydney were the last 2 to go, and they'll already have seen that almost the entire field has cleared 205. There was a huge pileup of women at 210, a couple at 215, and one at 220. So she's putting 225 on the bar to go for the win, but it's one shot. Like you got to hit it and you'll be in first, but if you don't, you're 10th. And
Mhm.
that was so she couldn't really, she had to decide like maybe she has more in the tank. Maybe she could do 230 or 230, but it's not worth it. If she hits the 225, the absolute worst she can do at that point is second, because Sydney could still come and potentially do more. But if she misses it, then you're all the way back down in a spot that's not where you want to be. Um, and then it changes the game for Sydney if she hits it or not. And that's the reward of being higher ranked in an event like that, is you can kind of evaluate, similar to Rattay, being able to see what Devin Brown did, go 5 pounds heavier and take the win without needing to push towards, I don't know, what did Larry say, 398 personal best for a clean and jerk or something. So yeah, very nice lifting for both Abby and City, not just on the weight side of things, but the execution under pressure side.
Yeah. Overall, and let's talk about, I mean, not to, we'll talk about Abby one more time. I mean, Abby, she competed, I mean, what, less than 2 weeks ago, individual. So for her to turn around and do this, not bad at all, I'd imagine.
No, and it's, this happens. This happens sometimes where people kind of stack competitions. It's like you've heard it. Like I just rode my fitness from semifinals into French Throwdown into
Mhm.
Can West Games that one year, whatever. So Abby competed in Miami, 14th place there. In the mix with a lot of other athletes. Gracie Walton, Julia Hannaford, Freya Moosbrugger, Andrazik, Kerstetter, Sagafi, Spiegel, all below her. Well, Moosbrugger, Hannaford, Neely, Rolfe. Like this is the caliber of athlete she's competing against there. So,
Mhm.
Obviously Wadapalooza, a very good field. And then she does this a couple of weeks later, a competition that's close to home that she's been doing for the past couple of years and has a good showing here. And so to me, this is another like potential strategy that athletes can use in the off season. Wadapalooza is a 2-day of competition, 5 workouts over 2 days. One of them was a lifting event. That's not very much more stressful than a regular 2 days of training for them. You can 2 weeks later, you go and you do a 2-3-2 format of competitions in TFX. Obviously, the intensity is high. You're trying to implement different things, but now she's gotten 12 touch points over a 2.5 week period of time where she can do the exact same thing we were talking about with Sydney, is what's been going on in my training for the last 6 to 8 months. Okay, let's take a look at what it looks like in 2 different competitions during this 3-week window. And now we have 5 months before the semifinal to take all that information that we've gathered about what we've been doing, how it looked in its presentation, execution, how did it feel, whatever, in Miami and in Texas, and get back to work.
Rounding out the podium, and it was basically a 2-person race, between a 2-woman race between Sydney and Abigail, at least that final day. And then Cody, is it Vitetto?
Yeah,
Vitetto. She was in third, and by a pretty big margin as well. You see they're 44 points ahead of Samantha Pugh. Samantha Pugh is an athlete who's podiumed here before, semifinalist. So who is Cody Vitetto? And tell us more about her.
Yeah, she's actually, I think she's 30 or 31 years old now, so she's not like one of these 21-year-old phenoms that's just popping up out of nowhere. But she actually qualified for semifinals last year. She was 40th in I can't remember if it was the East or the West, maybe the West. But she chose to compete with CrossFit Kima and their team. It finished 24th out of 40 or whatever it was out there. And basically, if you're good enough to make it on the individual side, if you don't go and compete at the individual semis and instead you compete on a team that's finishing in the middle to the bottom half of a semifinal field, you're not going to pop on the radar the same way you would if you'd done that. But knowing that she was good enough to make the semifinals against a field like this, where very few women were last year, not necessarily that surprising to see her have a top 5 finish at the very least. But if you look across the workouts there that Patrick has up on the screen, it was very consistent performances. She's 5th on the long event, and she's in the top 5 on the lifting event. The pro showcase events are a little bit of a wild card, so we basically can look at that and say, okay, she's not great at triple unders, but I don't think very many athletes are really prioritizing triple unders in their training. This was announced, and the athletes all started trying it the week or 2 before when they found out about it, and some of them pick it up quickly and some of them don't. It's still a middle of a finish there, and everything else is in the top 5. So you can't really look at what she did here and say anything other than positive things. She kind of checked all the boxes. She was clearly the 3rd best woman there, and I have not gotten to see her compete in person before that I can remember, and I was really impressed across the board with Cody.
Is this the type of athlete when you look at your top 200? Is she one of those athletes that kind of is right on the fringe of the top 200, or do you still need more data points to figure out if she belongs?
That's tough. When you're getting towards the bottom quarter of that, 151 to 200 range, where am I finding these athletes? I'm mostly finding them from competitions that I have experience with. So these are middle of the pack North American semifinals, middle of the pack Europe semifinals, or top performers in some of the smaller competitions they go to around the world. And I believe even when we did that show that I talked about, the fact that there are probably others out there that I'm not aware of that are just as good or better than some of these. But if you don't put yourself out there and compete, then like you said, we don't have the data to pull from to say, but that's definitely in the top 200. If you finish 40 in the North America West quarterfinals, what is that? How do I know how you're going to do in a semifinal? I have no idea. And the style of testing is different. It's online versus live competition. That in and of itself is a different data point. So even if there's someone who's doing really well in the open and the quarterfinals, but they don't go and compete at semifinals, and they don't do any off-season competitions that I'm aware of that are elite level in a live setting, it's going to be really difficult for me to justify throwing them on a list like that. So.
Yeah. We mentioned Samantha Pugh, kind of a veteran in the sport. Last year was an interesting one for her. She took a couple years off after COVID. Well, not immediately, like after COVID, she was dealing with some stuff, and looks like she's trying to make that comeback. She's, I believe, still an Underdogs athlete, an athlete that I think Kiefer was helping with, or one of the coaches at Underdogs. So a 4th place finish, especially with that caliber, with 2 established games veterans, I think that's a good finish. And then rounding out basically Taylor Patterson, she was 100 points better than Taylor Patterson. It looks like there's a logjam between right there from 5th to basically, I guess you can even say 11th, where everyone was within like maybe 40 points of each other.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this competition and you're trying to ask yourself, who are the likely candidates from here that we could see at a semifinal this year in North America with how hard it is, I would draw the line below Sam Pugh. I would say those
Yeah.
are the 4 up there that have a great chance based on this weekend to put someone together in the quarterfinals that could get them to a semifinal. And, the rest of the women, like you said, very tightly packed there, some highs and some lows. So that's kind of the makeup of the women's field at TFX this year.
Yeah. Any other athletes after Samantha that kind of caught your eye? Obviously, there's some familiar names, Chloe Carano, Ariel Sanders. Any of those athletes kind of stuck out like, hey, someone that could potentially compete for a semifinal spot?
Down the line, potentially. I think this year that probably have some work to do, but again, like the semifinal does not have to be the be all end all for everyone. I understand that
Sure.
it is a major goal, but there's a lot of other opportunities to compete in this sport. And I hope that those opportunities continue to grow and continue to get more recognition and hopefully more relevance for the athletes as well. So, like I said, I would try draw the line after 4 for this season, but I wouldn't want to, discourage these women from pursuing that for future because, first of all, you never know. We might get a great lineup of tests at quarters. And second of all, we have seen athletes that, do responsible work over time start putting, making those jumps year to year.
Yeah. Well, overall, it looked like it was very exciting women's field, especially that fight for that podium spot, the top spot in the podium between Sydney and Abigail, as we expected. But really good to see both of them there, and it looks like good things are in store for them for this season. Especially, I'm really interested to see what Sydney does this year, and then also seeing how Abby responds to a rookie year. So we'll switch over to the men's side, and I guess the story here is just Bill. It's all about Bill. I mean, it seemed like he pretty much from the second event just, was just on it. 3 event wins, 8 top 5 finishes. This is the Bill that we've been. I mean, both of us, we've talked about for the last 2 years, ever since the semifinals where he set the world record for the legless event. But yeah, this is what a performance by Bill.
Absolutely. And I wrote about him in the article quite a bit. And obviously we can look and see his performances on the floor are very good. He's one of these guys, like if you were an NFL scout, MLB scout, you would look at his resume and be like, dude, let's draft this guy. Let's get this guy. But everyone will know that sometimes the numbers on paper don't translate to the field of play. And you're like, what the heck? This guy is 6'3". He throws at 80 miles an hour. He won every event at the
Hero.
combine. And we put him out there and he can't read defense as well in real time or whatever, just to make an analogy to an NFL quarterback. And so far from Bill, we've seen the combine stats. Like we know that he's strong. We know he's a great runner. We know he's got these tremendous skills. He's athletic. And then let's look at the competitions that he's done. Okay, first year he shows up at semifinals. He has a world record, 1 or 2 other good performances, and the other stuff just wasn't quite there yet. But that's totally normal. You could actually say something very similar about Matt Fraser at the 2013 East Regional. Come back in 2014, we get a different version of Matt Fraser. Well, come back the different year for Bill Ley, and he withdraws after one event where he clearly, it should have been a good event for him. He looked terrible, and he withdraws from the competition and says he's sick. We have that just sucks. And speaking of Matt Fraser, like he has said this all throughout his career, the weekend that terrified him more than any other was regionals, semifinals, because it's a
one shot.
If you make up with the problem. If you have a problem going into semifinals, that's it. Your shot at the games is gone. So that happened to Bill last year. And then Bill could do one of 2 things, like we talked about with Sydney. He could just disappear to his little part of the country and do his training, and then we see him next year at semifinals. But he didn't make that choice. He pursued an opportunity to compete at Crash Crucible, and he pursued an opportunity to compete at the Fittest Experience. And the combination of those 2 things, we have gotten to learn a lot more about him as an athlete. and he has gotten to learn about himself a lot more as a competitor. He knows he's a great athlete, but as we've been talking throughout this show, there's a lot of other things that go into translating great potential to great performance. We got to see greatness on the floor, but I was much more impressed with his demeanor. He's very calm. He was poised. When there was an opportunity to, he's checking in with some people in the stands on these skills tests, and he never looked panicked in the workout. It was inverse, I think. He started towards ended up being his worst finish anyway, but like he was in the kind of the back of the pack in the first two parts of the workout, or the first part of the workout, and then he just slowly kind of moved up the pack in the back half of the workout. Like, you're not going to win every workout, and you're not going to lead every workout from beginning to end. I don't care who you are or what the field is. And so just watching that, I had a chance to speak to him a few times. Lauren Cleo talked to him a few times, so you can go and check some of that stuff on TFX YouTube if you want, and you'll see he expresses himself well. He's still a super young guy, and he doesn't have a ton of competition experience. We've seen people with much more success than him be much less able to speak clearly, especially shortly after a workout, and express how they're feeling, what they're thinking. And so I am seeing a trajectory for him, not just on the field of play, but off the field of play and mentally, that I think only increases my belief in what his top end potential is after this weekend, and even after Crash Crucible. I mean, if you want to get to know Bill a little bit, listen to the interview that Hiller did with him, and you'll get 20 minutes of conversation between these two guys. And anyway, so I got to meet his girlfriend. I got to meet his dad, and I think that it's pretty well known that Bill has a good support system around him. That was abundantly clear by meeting them, and I feel like a lot of the things are kind of coming together for him. I think that it's extremely likely we'll see him at the semifinal. Obviously, I still have to do it, and I'm just hopeful that he shows up there healthy this year, and that we'll kind of finally get the chance to see in that setting just how good he is. I think he's good enough to make the CrossFit Games. Beyond that, I'm not really sure yet, because that's a totally different beast than TFX or even a CrossFit semifinal.
Yeah, you've seen here just pulling up his past performances. When it comes to like regional, I guess, second tier competitions, he's cleaning up. Atlantic Coast Classic 2023, Coyote Fitness Winter Classic, Raging Games, Gulf Coast. So I think in terms of competition wins, TFX is it's the biggest win he's had as an individual competitor, and just shows. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. He was a favorite, came in, and he won pretty handedly. So good stuff. Hopefully he just stays healthy. He doesn't have any of the mishaps he did in the open or quarterfinals, and we can actually see a healthy Bill Ley in semifinals and hopefully at the games, because this is someone talking to Boz. Boz is really high on him. Boz brought him in to be part of the demo team 2 years ago, and talking to other demo athletes that were testing the workouts in Columbus, Ohio. They had the same thing. They're like, this kid has it. He has it. So finishing second, a local favorite, a guy who kind of just like Abigail, Abby kind of got his start at the TFX, and Trayvon Benton finishing second.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this men's field, there were certainly some names that stood out to me as likely to make the podium. Trayvon was amongst them. I probably would have picked him if we did our rankings to finish second or third here, but he wasn't in second or third for a majority of the competition. You can see here how strongly he closed: fourth, third, second, and he ended up moving from fourth up to second over those last two events. He may have even been in fifth, because our Tour of Tours was in the mix for a while also. But between, just like Abby Dammit, he competed at Wodapalooza, and 2 weeks later competed here, and he's also been at the semifinals last year. And I think that what I've seen from Trayvon Benton is excessively positive. He looks a little bit leaner to me, and a little bit more poised on the competition floor. He improved by 11 spots, I think, at Wodapalooza from 2023 to 2024, and he has podiumed here before in third. This year he'd take second, behind a guy who I think is on par with being a CrossFit Games athlete. And he had his workout out for him. You see, it was only at 10 points between him in second and Ben Wise there in third 5 points back, Brady 10 points back. So pretty tight between those three guys. And I think really good combination of two events for Trayvon between Wadapalooza and TFX, and hopefully riding a lot of momentum into the season. He generally does great on qualifiers, so I think that he is a very likely candidate to make it to a semifinal, and then it's just a matter of how much better he's able to get in a year.
Yeah, people know I'm a big Trayvon fan. You know, former collegiate athlete, and just getting to know more about his story. You know, tore his ACL his senior year or junior year playing baseball, and then just rehab. And so he would go to rehab in the morning, do his baseball workout, and then he'd do a CrossFit workout, and then he'd go to baseball practice, and then he'd follow baseball practice up with a CrossFit workout. I mean, that was part of his rehab, and you know, it's just cool. It's just cool, cool story, and yeah, really interested to see how he does regular. Like you said, he normally does good on the online competitions. So I think he finished 12th in the Open one year, maybe 2 years ago. But it'll be cool to see what he does. Anything else regarding Ben Wise or Matt Brady?
Yeah, I think that similarly to the women's side of things, if you're looking at guys who could potentially make a semifinal this year, I would probably draw it underneath the top 5 there. I think that things, quite frankly, the men in North America this year, they're only taking 80 total.
Yeah.
There's 500 men in North America that are probably good enough to do semifinals. And we know that the quarterfinal stage of competition is limited in what it can test and limited in the abilities to assess those tests. So, it's just brutal. If you're a male competing in North America hoping to make semifinals, you might be more than good enough to be there and not make it there this year. I would say all these guys are good enough. And it's just going to be a matter of, including Trayvon, a matter of how that quarterfinal stage of competitions go. But Ben Wise was the standout for me on the men's side in terms of athletes that I didn't know who exceeded expectations. I would have to say, based on everything I know about him, that this is his best competition performance ever, at least live. Actually, when I was doing some research, found out he's been competing in the Open since 2011.
Wow.
The first ever Open. He was 15th in California and 173rd worldwide back then.
Wow.
So he's been around for a long time. You can see there CrossFit Lumber Capital. I believe he owns that gym. His family was there. He's got a kid and a wife. And it was just kind of refreshing to see this guy out here competing for a podium spot the whole weekend, and he never let up. I mean, that final event, if you haven't watched the final event on the men's side, I would encourage you to check it out on TFX's YouTube, because between Leahy, Benton, Wise, and Brady, who all came in the top 4 spots, it was a battle right to the end. And Leahy, obviously, it was clear sailing from a points perspective, but there's no better way to win a competition than to win the final event. And that's what he was trying to do. Brady went for it. Wise and Benton stayed in the battle the entire time, and all 4 of them finished in the top 4 on that workout. And you see how small the margins were there. So for Ben to kind of hang tough with guys who are seasoned, experienced competitors like Benton and Brady. Brady was at the semifinal last year. He took 9th on the opening workout, the longer workout, and he started this competition with a win. He's a big dude. I mean, Ben Wise is on the smaller side. Matt Brady is on the bigger side. I think Matt's listed at 6'1" or 2 and around 215, something like that. Ben's like 5'7" or 8 and, maybe 190. So to see 2 different body sizes kind of duke it out all the weekend long was pretty fun to see. I would say all these guys were impressive. Benton and Brady and Torres was more expected. Wise was kind of a surprise, and I always love that. I would say that for me, as an analyst, as someone who loves the sport, adding Ben Wise and Cody Vettetto kind of on the radar as athletes to potentially watch this year or in future off-season competitions was a nice bonus for me.
And we'll cover the pro team real quick here. Probably no surprise here. Team density kind of takes it, but it was a close one. It was close.
Super close. When coming into this, the top 4 teams that you see there were the top 4 teams that I expected. Maybe not in that exact order, but Density is the 2-time defending champs coming in. I believe they had 3 of the same athletes from last year, and one of the women was a new addition to their team. if I understood Marco Coppola correctly, this season is going to be his last hurrah as a competitor. He's been competing for over a decade at TFX alone.
Yeah.
He was telling me stories about 2013, 2014. You know, they had both triple unders and a rope that you would usually use to climb that they were doing single unders with. And neither of those things are the first time they've been programmed at TFX. He told me stories about
Oh,
when
wow.
they programmed those a decade ago, triple unders, and a decade ago, those heavy rope single unders. But that was when it was called the Fittest Games. Apparently in 2018 or 19, they were giving orders to that was not an appropriate name after a decade of having it. But neither here nor there. They were the two-time champs coming in, and it was as close a race as you could have. After the first day, they were in fourth, but they were only 2.5 points behind SDA Excellence. SDA Excellence came in as a top seed on the online qualifiers, and then they maintained that lead right up until the final. I believe it was still 2.5 points, one way or the other, whichever way it was, I can't remember. But they were 2.5 points apart. Then they had a back-to-back workout, 4-part play A and B. They went 1-2 and 2-1, and then going into the final, it was head-to-head Density versus SDA Excellence for the win. And Density's men led things off. It was a male-male synchro workout with Chipper, then released the women for female-female pairs. The guys took the lead, and the women didn't relinquish it. The Salty Squad men were kind of well behind, actually, and the women surged past several teams, including SDA, to take second on that and solidify themselves in a third spot on the podium. Salty Squad, I've seen Justin Zazumbo compete at least 3 times this offseason now, often with Jordan, his wife Trish, and then Courtney Funk rounding out their team. And Lone Star CrossFit Black, they had 2 teams in the field, black and red. So 4 well-known teams kind of at the top there. And obviously SoCal Hotties are from California. And it's cool that this is a rural Texas competition and a team from California, a team from Utah, that they're traveling out there to compete. So some, semifinal caliber teams there, but at the end of the day, the champs remain the champs, and that's a 3-peat for Team Density.
Yeah. So that was stop 18 or 19. That's stop 19. All right. So you're in Chicago right now. The reason why you're in Chicago, it's probably easier to catch a flight to your next location from Chicago than it is from Charlotte. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's actually ridiculous. The round trip flight from Chicago to Madrid is less than half the price of the round trip from Charlotte to Madrid. But tomorrow I'm flying through Charlotte to get to Madrid. You tell me, Patrick. You tell me.
I don't know. It's a scheme. It's a scam. I'm not big into conspiracies, but man, that sounds like one right there.
But I mean, obviously, Chicago is a great spot to fly.
It's an international airport. Yeah.
My dad has a place here that he's not in during the winter, and so I can come here, stay for a couple nights, and be on my way over to Spain for a new competition. And if you've been following the World Tour the entire year, TFX was listed as the last stop if you have bought any of our T-shirts or sweatshirts or seen those around. But a few weeks to 2 months ago, maybe.
Is right after Dubai?
Yeah, right around then, that the PICSIL Pamplona Arena Games popped up on my radar, on my Instagram feed, when they started announcing athletes like Roman Krennikov and Karen Frey and Uldis Upenix to compete there. And I was like, what? How come I don't know about this competition? Like, that's just not a nobody. And then I started finding out that Fabian Benito is planning to be there, Madeline Persson, Ingrid Hodnemer, Sven Jeans, Alex Gatulis, Anastas Artemis. I'm like, I got to know more about this competition. We know the guys at PICSIL. We were able to talk with Tony. I had a meeting with Adrian, who's one of the directors there before Wodapalooza, met with Tony in Miami, which, by the way, I picked up this bag. This backpack is amazing, dude. The PICSIL bag, very, very well thought out, very good for competitors, very good for travel. If you're looking for a backpack for your gym or travel or whatever, I would recommend giving it a shot. And I know we've spoken with Marius, who said he's tried every backpack out there and he was equally impressed with it. So little plug there for them, because that's a pretty impressive backpack. Yeah. And so I created an opportunity to go here. So this will be stop 20. I head out to Spain tomorrow, get there Thursday morning. I'm going to meet up with Josie Astula, one of the world traveling MCs, Spanish speaking, works
Yep.
Madrid, Marbella. He'll be there. Facundo's going to be down there. It turns out Roman's unable to go, some visa problems, so he will not be there. But Karen Frey will be. Facundo obviously coaching her, so great to always spend some time with him. And then a host of other athletes: Elena Caratala, Sylvia Garcia, Anyola Kai, and you see some of the others there in the preview. This will be there. So it should be a pretty good competition, but a new one. And I'm looking forward to it. I'll be able to go to a different part of Spain, northern Spain there, and spend some time with the training culture guys after the fact. I'm going to try to go out to.
It's Pamplona where they do the running of the bulls.
I think that is the city they do running of the bulls. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Just something to think about. Yeah, let's talk about the women. Just look at the. I wasn't able to create a graphic for this. My apologies on this, but some of the names that stick out. You mentioned Elena. Elena's just been. I mean, that's typical Elena. She's always competing. It seems like she's like her and Karen are always they're part of that regional regional European circuit where they're doing competitions. I think Pamplona actually had a pretty cool graphic where it kind of listed Karina Frayova's finishes in competitions, and it was a lot of first place finishes, especially this off season.
I mean, Karen's won I would say like 3 very relevant or even major off season competitions.
Madrid, Dubai, French Throwdown.
Dubai. There you go.
Yeah. So Elena's in that mix, and then you brought up Ingrid. This will be Ingrid's second individual competition. For those who don't know Ingrid, she was a key member of those Oslo, those Norway teams, that 3-time podium finishers in the team division. Julia Hogard Nielsen. Those I don't know her.
She's actually not gonna be there this weekend.
That's unfortunate.
Found that out. Yeah, it is unfortunate.
Okay. Well then, and then we mentioned Freyova, Madeline Pearson, who's I believe Swedish. She's pretty
Swedish,
well.
Top 20 at semis last year. I saw her actually compete in a team competition in Sweden, which I was also competing in, different divisions. And she won that with her male counterpart there in the male-female pro division. So excited to see her. She has she was a surprise at semis last year, and I was impressed with what I saw in Halmstad as well, and looking forward to see her compete again individually.
Yeah, she's really she's one of those other athletes you see competing those IF3 competitions as well. A name that kind of stuck out for us, especially in Madrid, Sylvia Garcia will be competing. And then a bunch of other look like a lot of Spaniards. Any other names there that you to watch out for besides the ones that we listed?
I think those are the big ones, meaning that those are the ones we know of. In terms of like foreign athletes that are not to Spain, there's also Julia Blazejowska, one of the better athletes in Poland. She's still only 23 years old. I feel like I've been watching her compete for like 4 or 5 years. And Marika Seppala coming down from Finland. She competed at the French Throwdown, 17th there. Which is not a bad finish. But yeah, if you're looking outside of Spain, they got Ingrid from Norway, Julia from Poland, Karen from Slovakia, Madeline from Sweden, and Marika from Finland. So 5 different countries there, and then a bunch of Spanish athletes. A few of them we've seen compete this year already. Alazna Egliazabla was in Madrid with Elena and Sylvia. And then a bunch of the other ones who have been competing in other Spanish competitions, like the Basque CrossFit Championship, for example. So we'll learn some more about the Spanish athletes there. There's, if assuming that this is a good competition, I would say there are 3 pretty good competitions now happening in Spain with Madrid, Marbella, and this one. And there's a big contingency of Spanish athletes that are, prevalent or relevant in that competition circuit over there. So always exciting, similar to going to Italy, where they have some international athletes come in, but you're really going to get the exposure to the broader Italian CrossFit community and that kind of fringe of being on the pro circuit level. So that's kind of the makeup of the women's side.
It helps having that name PICSIL connected to that as well. And it looks like, talking to Tony and the PICSIL people, they're excited about this, and this is something they want to kind of grow, kind of like, this could be their when I talked to him, he mentioned something that's like, this could be, Europe's Rogue Invitational, or, their version of it, I guess. But moving on to the men's side, again, you mentioned Roman not being able to make it due to visa issues, but it's still a very impressive lineup of games athletes here. We have Alex Catullus. You brought up Fabian and Oldest. I'm trying to think any other notable
I mean,
names. Oh,
yes. I mean,
yeah,
similarly,
I
like to
know.
me, it's you would expect to see mostly Spanish athletes here. There's actually a little bit more diversity on the men's side, even than the women's in terms of international presence. You got two guys from Greece. Alex Catullus, probably the more well-known just because of his success over the years, especially in
Yeah.
Dubai, where he was sixth again this year in a really good field. And then a young guy, 24 years old, Anastas Artemis, who I got to watch compete live at Fall Series Throwdown. He took second place there to Tommaso Piero, and he was also 26 at the French Throwdown. So I'm excited to get to see him compete again. He has some really impressive characteristics in terms of an athlete, and still some things he's rounding out, I would say, but I would expect him to do quite well on most of the workouts. The workouts are all announced, by the way. You got two guys coming down from Norway, and I actually know both of these guys. Victor Helsinghoff, you know,
Victor.
Patrick, and we've
Yep.
spoken about him because he had a good semifinal. And Chris Nielsen, I actually met him at when I was doing that affiliate event in Norway.
Oh yeah, at
He
the
came.
gym.
He came to participate there,
Nice.
and he was, I mean, by far the fittest participant that was there. But he's also really plugged in with the CrossFit scene there. You may not know him. If you generally might not know him, but he's 24 years old. He's very fit, and he is a potentially kind of a sneaky guy to have your eye on coming out of Norway. So I was super pumped when I saw him on the roster. Yuri Marinchenko comes over from Italy. I think that Zanoni is probably still the top guy there, but Marinchenko, he's 28. He's been competing for a long time. He was at semis last year, took 50th. He competed in Madrid where he was 18th. So it's great to have one of the top guys. Tommaso Piero is in that conversation as well, but I would say he's top three in Italy still making the trip. Sven Jeans, who we were supposed to see compete earlier this year, I think in Italy he didn't end up making the trip there. He represents Belgium. Uldis obviously coming over from Latvia, so you get a little bit of international diversity to go with. Some of the best guys in Spain, not just Fabian Benito, but Aniola Kai, Fernando Janeza, who was fifth in Marbella a couple months ago. So it should be a pretty good balance of the kind of the top Spanish guys with some of these other, like you said, semifinalists and fringe semifinalists from different countries in Europe.
Right. So there is not going to be a live broadcast. However, I think you found a solution to that.
I mean, so we're gonna try the Instagram lives. So I will, similarly to what I did at Fall Series Throwdown and what we did at Fittest of the Coast, that's the first go-to plan. It is nice that we have this kind of alternative solution if needed, that we can record and upload to YouTube post workout or competition or event or whatever. But one way or another, the intent is that you will be able to watch the elite divisions compete from Pamplona if you want to, either on Instagram or on YouTube, depending on how strong the bandwidth for doing the Instagram lives is. I like doing the lives just because it's real time. There's engagement from the people that are watching. They can ask questions or sometimes even provide some insights on the athletes that I know a little bit less about. But I would say the quality of the stream is going to be lower than if we record it on the phone and post it to YouTube. But one way or the other, we should have be able to provide the chance for you guys to watch it. Yes.
All right. Cool. You got your passport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Of course.
Just check.
Even domestically, I always travel with it.
Yeah, it's smart because you just never know.
I don't trust the real ID. I believe the passport will get me in anywhere.
Well, that's stop 20. Looks exciting. Can't wait. I'm jealous that I can't be there, but I gotta actually go to Chicago this weekend. But it's only been a couple days, but already a lot of news coming out. Let's kind of talk about that. The biggest thing is it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm about to go to bed. Yes, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to bed, and this pops up. Really no surprise to me for those who know my relationship with Khan, but we have our first major announcement in terms of a team. Cara made it known on Sevon's podcast that she was going team, and she did mention James Newberry. Well, we figure out who the other two athletes are. none other than Con Porter and Emily DeRoy. So this is the Mayhem Storm, I believe is what they're going to be called, Mayhem Storm. So there'll be a Mayhem team.
Yeah, and Mayhem had a team coming out of Australia last year with Royce Dunn leading them. So not surprising to see kind of Mayhem with that international stamp on the team competition. You and I have known about the development of this team for, I don't know, a couple months now. I think that dialing in the last female on the team was kind of the biggest question mark. And I like this decision for Emily DeRoy. She made it to the games last year. Didn't have a great performance there. I'm under the impression that she had a little bit of an injury coming in. She's done a little bit in the off season, but it's going to be competitive in Oceania to make the games. It always is. And just because she made it last year, I don't think there's any guarantee. This team should, healthy, not just make it, but run away with the semifinal, be in the mix for a top 10 at worst at the games, I would expect, if they're all healthy. And who knows, maybe top 5 or threaten for a podium, depending on what the field looks like globally on the team side of things. And we know that for young athletes that are looking to get experience, competing at the CrossFit Games on a team is actually not that bad of an idea. So I like the move for Emily DeRoy. Gets to go there with 3 of the most experienced athletes in that she could really pick in terms of from that part of the world. And it is kind of a funny team because of their personalities. Like James and Khan are very, very like in your face for different reasons types of guys. Cara, she's the fittest of these without a question across the totality of her career, but she's not so loud as a personality compared to the others. And Emily's very young, and she'll get a chance to kind of soak all of that in. So I like this team a lot, and I think it's really nice when we have like strong teams coming out of different regions. It gives me more of this like championship feel at the games than when 10 of the top 12 teams are from North America.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get Khan on at some point to kind of talk about this as well as some of the other stuff that's been going on in his life. So, and plus, we love Khan.
We had him. Yeah, we had him on at the games. He was co-hosted our coverage there that Box Basics made possible for us, and we had just a natural rapport with him, a good relationship that you and him have had for a long time. So anytime we can get Khan on, regardless of what the topic is,
exactly, it's going to be a good conversation. In other news, kind of more not so positive news is this was announced. It was I believe it was broke by Barbell Spin, an athlete that we've seen quite a few times, Valentina Rangel, has been given a 4-year suspension from CrossFit.
Yeah, and I mean, we will reiterate as we always do, if you want to get fast news like this, Barbell Spin is the place to go. And, there's part of the way that he sets up what he does. He has great trust with athletes. He has great research and resources available to him. And he's not bound by a publishing schedule. So when he gets it, he gets the confirmation that he needs. He posts it. If you love the sport of CrossFit and want to know what's going on, you should absolutely be following his stuff. And then, you never like to see this, but we understand that it happens. And we understand that it happens in a variety of different ways and time periods. This is dating back to semifinals last year, and now we're approaching the open of the following season when we're finding out about it. Because she writes a little about it here, she's gone through this process of having back and forth communications with CrossFit, asking them to test a B sample, trying to get to prove some innocence in terms of maybe tainted supplements, eventually deciding it was too expensive to pursue, and so she's just accepted it for what it is. She had a back injury at Dubai 2 Dubais ago, about 13 months ago. She somehow still made it back to the semis and was able to compete there. But she does reference that she's going to have another surgery for her back. So, this is it's a tough thing to see. Not only do you have now, kind of likely the end of her competitive CrossFit career with this 4-year ban, you also your body's broken to some extent where you have to go and have another surgery. So obviously we will wish for the surgery and the recovery to go well for her, but could be the last time that we see her in the kind of stages that we have these last couple of years.
Also breaking this morning is this announcement is Noble partnering up with Tom Brady and his TB12 and a supplement company. Initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, not, I would say, like, relative to those other things, not necessarily my area of expertise or interest, but Noble has been a super relevant brand in the CrossFit space over the last 5 years or so, from the athlete side to sponsoring the game side to the apparel side. They're a part of the community and they've had a
Hmm.
big impact on it. Tom Brady is amongst the best athletes in the history of the world, really, and especially in
In
his
any
sport.
sport.
Tom Brady reminds me a little bit of LeBron James in the fact that towards the back half of his career, he has really made an investment um, in creating something that he can continue to do and provide a positive impact with after he leaves the sport in terms of playing in it. Obviously, he comes from the same part of the country where Noble is in the Northeast there. Several of the guys who've worked at Noble are big New England Patriots fans.
Hmm.
They've had a partnership with, I'm drawing a
Mac
blank on
Jones.
Mac
Mac
Jones,
Jones.
who's with the Patriots, and in that part, they've showed interest in the NFL through their involvement with the combine. So it makes sense. It's not like I was surprised, but then the more I thought about it, and I wasn't surprised. Like it just
Yeah.
kind of. Noble's been struggling in some capacity. I don't exactly know what that is, but there's been a tail off for sure, and somewhat publicly facing ways within the CrossFit space. I hope that this can be a turnaround for them. I know people who work at Noble. They're
Hmm.
good people.
Great
They're
people.
trying to do good things. They still sponsor some of the best athletes in our sport. And if this is a positive thing for Noble, I still believe they have a passion for CrossFit and that can ultimately be a positive for CrossFit as the sports continue to try to grow. You don't want to lose companies that are trying to invest heavily in athletes, whether they're established or up and coming. And in some cases, the athletes that they sponsor are still very young, even though they're very good. And so I think this is good all the way around. It seemed like they needed to kind of catch a break. This might be, and we're going to say catch a break. Like you might have worked really hard to make this
Hmm.
partnership happen. They posted something yesterday, I think, about the fact that there's an evolution coming. We see what it is here. And so I would say this is positive.
Yeah, and I think it's just a start. This is just the announcement. I think there's other things on you wouldn't do something like this, and Tom Brady wouldn't do something like this if there wasn't a bigger picture involved and a bigger reach. So I think overall this could actually end up being something that helps CrossFit and as a community having something like Tom Brady associated with it. Because at the end of the day, Noble was born through training. It's a CrossFit brand, and having someone like him involved might be beneficial. Um, Speaking of barbell spin, this is something he came up with yesterday in terms of games tickets. They went on sale, and according to Barbell Spin, there's not many tickets left, especially inside Dickies. So
Yeah, and
I don't.
this post is from now a full day ago, so could be a lot less left than even that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I saw something on Pedro's Instagram, Steep Coffee Pods and Wads. He did, his Q&As that he often does, and someone asked him about the state of the sport, and he referenced this directly. He said, well,
Mhm.
games tickets went available to the public, and they basically sold out in a day. That seems like a positive thing to me.
Does to me. And speaking of which, if you have you signed up for the Open yet, Brian?
No, but I will.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually might sign up for the Open this year, even though I'm probably in the worst shape. I think I might just do it just because I don't know. Typically, I've just signed up for the judges course, and that's how I contribute. But I might do both. I mean, I'm obviously going to do the judges course, but I might sign up for the Open. We'll see. I got a couple weeks.
I will do the judges course also. I do it every year, although I think I forgot to click a button 2 years ago to finalize it, but I did do the
Yeah,
course. And I've heard that the judges course is much better this year than it has been in previous years for multiple
yeah.
people at this point.
I was watching Get with the Programming, and Chase and Bill said that it's actually a lot better, which is great because as someone who's taken the judges course every year since 2014, it's cool to kind of see that evolve as well. And final thing I want to bring up is something that's really dear to us and something that we actually really care about because of our friend J.R. Howe is Crash Crescendo.
Yeah. I just want to say one other thing about Get with the Programming.
Oh yeah,
I've actually been listening to a bunch of their stuff recently, just catching up. It's pretty tough when you're on the road to watch any of it live or anything like that. But I listened to their Dubai. I listened to their season thing that they did with Halpin and all those different guests that they had proposal for the new season. I listened to their Wadapalooza individual and team and the contingency plan episode, and it's been a while since I've listened to that much of their stuff. And I just got to say, like, even though there are these other people that you can listen to, these guys are good, man. Like, if you care about competitions, if you're programming competitions, running competitions, if you want to get a really like an actual perspective on how to program, you should be listening to those guys. They don't, and Chase talks about this on their episodes. He's like, we're not being mean. We're not being critical. We're critiquing. We're looking at what it is, comparing it to our nearly 40 years of experience that the two of them have combined in this sport. And that's competitive athletes, coaching competitive athletes, programming for competitive competitions, broadcasting competitive competitions around the world, and then doing the most extensive public facing analysis of competitions from the beginning of the CrossFit Games to now, from the CrossFit Games reel just dropped saying sold out. There you go. From the regionals across the years, et cetera, et cetera. Like, especially if you're programming competitions, running competitions. If you're not listening to them, you're not doing a service to your athletes. Listen to those guys. Crash Crescendo features one of the other programming experts that we have in this space, J.R. Howell, a very good friend of mine. He and Taylor Self do a programming show in their own regard on Savant's podcast called Shut Up and Scribble. But before that, J.R. was running these competitions out of his gym, which he continues to do twice a year. The spring has a team competition and the fall has an individual competition. Crash Crescendo is the team version of this. There's two different elements happening here, as you can see. Co-ed teams of 4, that is for elite teams, probably up and down the East Coast, and it's specifically placed at a point where you can have a check-in weekend before semifinals if you want it. 3 weeks after the team quarterfinals, 4 and 5 weeks before the North America semifinals, you're not going to find a better opportunity to go and test yourself in a very similar competitive setting to what semifinals is going to be as a team of 4 than at Crash Crescendo. If you're competing in the East Coast and you're looking for something like that, do this competition. Reach out to JR and find out how you can get in that field. Even if you don't make semifinals this year, but you're close, you're on the cusp of it, you want to be there in a year or two, it's a great competitive field to get in. I think there were 5 North America East semifinals, or 6, maybe one at a withdrawal, but 5 or 6 out of a field of 10 to 12 last year. We did actually stream it. It was the first competition that I ever live streamed from my phone with nothing else. So you can even go back and watch that. And so that's one element of this competition. There's also advanced, intermediate, and novice same-sex teams of 4. So, 4 men or 4 women in all 3 of those divisions. So there's 7 total divisions there. Registration opens this week. Those non-elite teams, I'm not entirely sure of the qualification process for co-ed teams. Reach out to JR if that's you. Otherwise, there's athletes that I used to coach in Chicago that have gone down and competed in this. I've competed in this 2 years ago. It's a great competition. JR knows what he's doing, and he has a theme every year. This year's theme is for the girls. So all of his workouts will be based off of the girl workouts. If you don't know what those are, look them up. But I can promise you, especially since it's teams of 4, you're not just going to get Grace.
Fran, Grace.
You're going to get something that you can look at it and say, like, I see what he did there, but this is a little different.
And it looks like Colton Mern's looking for teammates. So just putting that out there. So just slide into Colton's DMs if you want to team up with him. Obviously, Colton is a fan favorite and someone that is really tight with JR and those guys down there. So it'd be really cool to see him compete. That's about it. All I got for the news. I mean, is there anything else you feel like I'm missing? Or
I don't mind addressing these questions from Scott Lillico if you want.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pull those up. Here we go. When you working with Sevon again? Brian, when you working with Sevon?
I don't know. I'm friendly with Sevon. I love what he does. You guys know that. I appreciate all of the people that see me on the road and say, man, I love you. And Sevon together, he and I have had a roller coaster of emotions. I do hope that we can find a way to work together again at some point. But for now, what he's looking for and I'm looking for are just a little different. And so I hope that we can just continue to, support each other from where we're both at, and maybe we'll merge paths again in the future.
And he follows it up with, "How are you and Hiller?"
Yeah, I actually have had some great conversations with Andrew the past couple days. He did help kind of provide a solution in his own unique way for what was happening at TFX with the live stream. That got some positive feedback. We kind of, he reached out to me Monday to ask how it went, and we had some conversations from there. I haven't loved some of the stuff that Hiller's put out about me and my company. I wish that he had asked me some of those things privately, but he does his own thing, and you can't say that we're surprised with how he operates. I know that Hiller has a tremendous value that he can add to this community. I think sometimes he does things that are not the most valuable, but people watch it, and that's important to him too. I'm happy to work with Hiller. He has great ideas. He's very creative, and I still consider him a friend. You're muted, Patrick.
And finally, Scott just crushing it. How do you feel about John Young's Canyon? I don't know. Literally figured. What do you mean by canyon now?
He had an episode. He's done what did he do? The mountain, the hill, rookie hill, and then the comeback canyon. And I guess there was a cliff or something in there. I spoke to him about it. I haven't watched this episode, but I did speak to him about it in Texas. I think actually the first athlete that I asked him about, he goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot to put that person in. I think it was Saxon Panchik." But he's basically just identifying athletes that he hopes or that he feels need to have a comeback this year. It's cool. It's a cool way, good visuals that his, Spin and Tyler come up with to get people hopefully excited for the year. You talk about who kind of the king of the hill is, who are the newcomers up and coming on the block potentially, and then who are the athletes that can be maybe looking to have a rebound. I appreciate all of the creativity and expertise that John has when it comes to the top athletes in this sport. So I know those shows on Wednesdays with him and Tyler and Spin are doing really well. I'm happy for those guys, and I would encourage you to watch them. I mean, it's an easy follow. It's every Wednesday, and they always have good stuff there.
Yeah. Well, I listened to it, and it was a good episode. I actually think it was Tyler actually went off at the beginning of it. He actually was screaming and yelling. I forgot what it was about, but it was really untight. I mean, he did it had John surprised. So if you haven't watched that episode, go back and watch it. It's a good one. I agree with you. The graphics and creativity is top notch. Again, want to send a shout out to Larry Young. Appreciate your support. Sorry that you're stuck third row at the games, but hey, at least you're in the games, right? Sounds like I'm hoping they open up a couple more tickets. They might do that later on through they've done it in the past. So if you get tickets to the games, I don't know. Sounds like they might have some type of festival, outdoor engagement, stuff like that set up. So yeah. I think that's it. I gotta get off here. I got a meeting in like 2 minutes, but no, I want to again thank everyone for your support. Nothing really on my radar. Just got Army this weekend. Was a busy weekend of shooting photos this past weekend with gymnastics. It was great, by the way. I can't wait for you guys to see the photos. But it was ridiculous. 9,000 people watching a gymnastics meet. So it was ridiculous.
That looked like a cool venue over there.
Yeah. And actually, NCAA gymnastics is actually held in Dickies Arena. Just saying. So there's a possibility. The NCAA championship. So there is a possibility I might actually be down at Dickies Arena.
Dude, I got a chance to talk to Chase Ingram and Ken Waycaster from Sherpa Works about that venue. And I mean, I've spoken to them both about it before, but every time I do, it just gets me more and more excited for what this year's CrossFit Games could end up being.
Yeah, and same here. So again, shout out to HGR and Carl, HomeGrown Releaf. Thanks for your support as usual. Remember, use was it Friend 20?
Friend 20, yeah.
Friend 20, here we go. Friend 20 for 20% off your HGR CBD products purchases. So make sure you do that. Appreciate the support as always. Brian, appreciate you coming on. We might have another show this week. I'm trying to get someone scheduled. Brian probably will not be able to make the show, so it might be me and Chad again, maybe Bella. So, just tune in our social media channels, and we'll let you know what's going on. With that being said, thank you as always to everyone that tunes in and all your support. And as always, be friendly, our friend.